Pursuant to Standing Order 36, the question that this House do now adjourn is deemed to have been made. However, the independent member for Guelph has given notice of dissatisfaction with the answer to a question given by the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks. So the member for Guelph will have 5 minutes to state his case, and someone from the other side, perhaps a parliamentary assistant, will have up to 5 minutes to respond. We turn now to the member from Guelph.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today to defend the work that conservation authorities do to protect drinking water and to protect us from flooding. Since I first raised this issue in question period, a growing number of municipalities, elected officials, and community organizations have asked the government to withdraw Schedule 6 from Bill 229. 64 community organizations are running ads asking the government to stop attacking CAs. In addition, many municipalities, including the Ontario Big City Mayors and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, have asked the government to withdraw Schedule 6. People are speaking out against Schedule 6 because flooding is the costliest extreme weather risk in Canada, causing insurance payouts of over $1 billion 11 of the last 12 years. The damage to public infrastructure is 3 times that amount. Experts say that the cost of flooding will triple over the next decade. That is why, Speaker, it is fiscally irresponsible for the government to act with such reckless disregard for the way CAs have saved lives and money. Speaker, I want to address some of the government's responses to my questions. I've been surprised that PC members have questioned the effectiveness of CAs. A federal government report on the cost of weather damage cited the unique role conservation authorities play in mitigating the risk and cost of flooding in Ontario. The province's own special advisor on flooding specifically identified the important role CAs play in reducing flood risk, and that CAs need more tools to do their job better. But instead of giving CAs more tools, the government wants to undermine them. CAs are science-based, nonpartisan agencies. Granting permitting authority, by contrast to the minister, would take the science out of the equation, effectively politicizing the permitting process and allowing for irresponsible developments that may be unsafe or damage natural infrastructure. Secondly, government members have said they are strengthening CAs, but that's not what municipalities, scientists, and CAs are saying. I want to quote the Mayor of Milton, and I quote, "These changes would hurt residents if housing is allowed to be built in floodplains. And who is going to pay? It will be our local taxpayers picking up the bill for events that could have been prevented." End quote. Or let me quote the chair of the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. I quote, "The changes will in fact strip conservation authorities of their ability to ensure that people, infrastructure, and the environment are protected from damage and destruction that cannot be repaired." End quote. Speaker, I could go on, but my time is limited. The minister has also said that CAs are not transparent or accountable. So I want to be clear that we need more transparency and accountability, not less, in government. That's why I was pleased that when CAs approved new administrative bylaws in 2018 to improve transparency and accountability. The irony of Schedule 6 is it will likely increase red tape and administrative costs. 4, government members have said there is no appeal process for CAs. But, Speaker, there currently is an appeals process to the Mining and Land Tribunal, but less than half of 1% of CA decisions are appealed to the tribunal. This low number is not an indication that CAs are doing a bad job. It's that they're actually doing a good job. I want to conclude by highlighting a few points of why Schedule 6 is so problematic. Almost 75% of the wetlands in southern Ontario have been paved over, and it's vital that we protect them. The Insurance Bureau of Canada estimates that 10% of the 10.9 million homes in Canada are at risk of flooding because they are built in floodplains. So I know that some developers complain when CAs say no to paving over wetlands and building in flood plains. But these science-based decisions save lives, and they save and protect people's property. A University of Waterloo study has shown that wetlands decrease the cost of flooding by 38%. The average cost to repair a flooded basement is $43,000. By contrast, the Grand River Conservation Authority in my riding provides flood protection at $2.81. CAs protect drinking water, and they protect us from flooding at bargain basement prices, and they should be protected, preserved, and strengthened.
Thank you. One of the parliamentary assistants will reply. She'll have up to 5 minutes. I turn to the member for Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to respond to the member from Guelph and answer his questions. And I want to assure members of the House that our government is firmly committed to protecting Ontario's residents and communities against the impacts of flooding. We also recognize the problem of flooding is increasing as a result of extreme storm brought on by global climate change. And the honourable member does claim that we are gutting the ability of conservation authorities to protect Ontarians against the effects of flooding and enabling the government to override decisions supported by science. Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth, and this is misrepresentation. Our government understands the value of conservation authorities. After all, it was under a Conservative government in 1946 that the Conservation Authorities Act was created to restore responsible management of hydrological areas. It was through this initiative brought through a Conservative government that we continue to work with conservation authorities when it comes to protecting and preserving against natural hazards. They are critical to the protecting of the conservation authorities are critical to protecting against natural hazards as well as our drinking water. And of course, through the watershed approach provided by the Conservation Authority Act, conservation authorities help protect people and property from unpredictable and extreme weather that has been aggravated because of flooding and, of course, other natural hazards. This role is becoming even more important, protecting people against flooding as we see extreme weather events, and that is just what we are doing with our changes. And I will reiterate that the changes we are making is to help conservation authorities with the impacts in combating flooding. And let me be crystal clear if there's any misconceptions here, and to help bust any myths that the minister's permitting decisions in these situations, the exact same criteria, standards, definition, rules will be considered, and the rigor remains unchanged. In fact, decisions will be based on science that considered Section 28(1)(a), (b), and (c) in the Act, just as they did previously. The rigor will continue, full stop, Speaker. And over the years, conservation authorities have expanded past their original core mandate, which is why we're putting in these changes, because ziplining and photography and wedding permits don't help prevent flooding. However, what does help prevent flooding is, of course, empowering these conservation authorities with the ability to protect natural hazards, which is still under our changes. And of course, Speaker, with the proposed changes, we're giving municipalities greater control so they're able to enter into agreements, if they choose, with conservation authorities to fund any of their programs outside their core mandate, if they choose. We heard that conservation authorities do not apply the same rules and fees as other neighbouring CAs. So what we heard from constituents across Ontario is that they have, and what they've been asking for 2 years, which is why we've been consulting, is the fact that there are inconsistencies. For example, a constituent reached out and contacted the ministry to request help to secure a permit from the TRCA for a culvert to access a portion of his property where he wanted to plant 5,000 trees. He needed the government's help to simply get permission to plant these trees, an initiative the member opposite claims to be passionate about. In addition to this, today in committee, we heard about Section 21.1b when it comes to notice of trespassing, where a small business owner put their livelihood into a business only for conservation authority officials to go in there for a lunch, and after that lunch, they got slapped with a fine. Speaker, this is not transparent. In addition to that, during the completion of maintenance of repair, Quinte Conservation filed charges against a landowner for completing certain restoration actions, resulting in a 5-day trial in Ontario Court of Justice, and had a large fine. Speaker, this person was trying to restore a shoreline and protect the environment. Then there was an example of a couple in Carp who spent over $700,000 to build their home, and were then told a month later that they have actually no ownership over their property, and they have no input on their driveway, their patio, their soil, or any part of their property. Speaker, we want to fix the inconsistencies to ensure Ontarians' hard-earned money is being spent appropriately and provide consistency across the board, because at the end of the day, there's only one taxpayer. The honourable member accuses us of attacking conservation authorities by taking away their ability to protect Ontarians and their environment as well as infrastructure. But, Mr. Speaker, just to put it into context, in 2017, there were 25 conservation authorities that were spending less than 20% of their budget on flood mitigation. In fact, 10 of those 25 conservation authorities were spending even less than they were spending, closer to 10%. The proposed changes we are doing is going to, we're moving forward, is to fix we'll fix this, and we'll bring conservation authorities back to their core mandate and address the very concerns the member opposite is raising. Misinformation suggesting that the government is gutting conservation authorities or intervening in their operations simply in the interest of developers is not based on fact. Thank you, Speaker.
I would caution the member, if the word misinformation was used, I would ask you to withdraw and never to repeat that again.
Withdraw. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much.